I was 16 when I got arrested. The charges? Well, it's not a terribly long story, and I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. I stole some stuff. From a church. Why did I do it? I don't know. Maybe I wanted some excitement in my mundane crap show of a life. Maybe it was what my current therapist described as a sudden case of kleptomania. I didn't need to steal from the church's offering jar, but good lord, it gave me a rush the first, second, and seventh time that I did it. I mean, it's not like the place needed it. I didn't see why the pastor there needed another Corvette, or why that particular church needed another set of renovations. They had just rebuilt the place like a month before I'd been caught. Look, I'm not gonna defend what I did. I stole over $3,000 from a house of God. Stealing is wrong. Getting caught stealing is worse. But that's neither here nor there. I went in front of a judge. I was sentenced to 2 years. Not bad. I mean, it meant that I'd missed the last 2 years of high school anyway. But that didn't really bother me. I didn't have any friends anyway. My mom and dad were pissed though. I mean, I could see the look of pure contempt in my dad's face when they walked me out of the courtroom. My mom couldn't look at me. She wept. That pulled on my heartstrings. It wasn't her fault. She didn't fail me as a parent. I failed myself. Then there I was in the back of a van with 2 other kids, heading to the Gideon State School. They dropped me off in the morning on a Tuesday. It was the middle of January and it was cold as hell outside. I can remember pulling up to the front gate. I could see the chain link fence with coils of razor wire that curled inwards to keep anyone from climbing up and out, stretching for maybe 200 yards in either direction. Directly ahead of me was the main gate, which was maybe 20 feet of chain link fence with razor wire itself. Then there was the little brick building that made up the guard shack. I didn't go inside of said building. The van I was in slowly pulled through the gate. Inside, I found a few guards or juvenile corrections officers, JCOs for short. They waited for us in a line. There were 2 of them. There was the tall and broad one called JCO Heinrich. This dude looked ex-military. He had muscles that bulged through the thick black-colored shirt of uniform that the JCOs wore. He didn't say much. Then again, no one had, not even the 2 kids I'd rode in with. The other JCO was called D. She was a short black lady with glasses and dreadlocks. She had a no-nonsense look about her. It honestly frightened me more than Heinrich. We were escorted from the van. I could feel the cuffs around my wrist and ankles rubbing up against me at an odd angle. It made walking uncomfortable. I couldn't imagine trying to run off. I looked at the kid to my right. He was younger than me. His skin was an olive color. He had curly hair and freckles all over his face. I looked at the kid on my left. He was a tall and lanky black kid with thick glasses. My eyes found JCOD. She was looking straight at me. Her eyes predatory. I felt like I was being stalked by a goddamn crocodile. Welcome to Gideon State School. How many of you have gone through orientation for the Gideon Youth Rehabilitation Program? She asked. We all had. The GYRP, everyone pronounced it GERP, was like an 8-hour-long video that all inmates that went to any Gideon facility in the state had to endure before coming. It was a bunch of bogus rules and mandates. It also gave a rundown of safety expectations and the whole PREA thing. What is PREA? Something I'm not going to go into detail on here about. Look it up. Just know that it is just as bad in juvenile prisons as it is in adult facilities. We all nodded at D. She nodded. Very good. Now my partner and I will take you to intake. There we will go over your treatment plans and find out which dorms you will be assigned to. Any questions? She asked. I shook my head. I'd expected as much. Yeah, when is breakfast? I'm starving, asked the curly-haired kid from next to me. Dee didn't answer. She looked past them as the county van that had dropped us off pulled away. She seemed to relax her shoulders as soon as the gate closed. That that bothered me. I swear her eyes shifted too, like a red light came on. "Let's go," she said coldly. Now, the Gideon State School was divided into around 24 buildings that were spread out over a large hill. All of these buildings were interconnected by a series of surprisingly well-paved roads. There was the administrative building, which was to the left of the gate shack. It was a one-story brick building. Directly to the administrative building's right was a small chapel. Then, directly behind the chapel were 18 dormitories. I'll get to describing them later. Behind the dormitories were 2 other buildings which sat on top of the hill. One was the cafeteria, the other was the school. Yes, the Gideon State School had an actual school building. It was the biggest building on the campus, being 2 stories of classrooms with a gymnasium and a basketball arena. The school wasn't nice by any means. The building was almost 100 years old and decrepit. The inside was dirty. There were no lockers. Keep in mind, we were incarcerated individuals, children or not. They didn't want us hiding things. Then, let's get to the last building. A building that sat on the far left of the hill and almost at the base. It was a dorm, but smaller than the rest, other than the guard shack. But it had a garage attached. It also looked a lot newer. It also had its own barbed wire fence around it. It was the Gideon State School Max security pen. It was also where the security unit was stationed. We would call them GSU, Gideon Security Unit. Now, I wouldn't learn till after my stay at GSS that the GSU was a bit more brutal in their approach than, say, other security units at juvenile detention facilities around the state. GSS was a privately owned facility, formerly owned by a company called Gideon. When I stayed there, Gideon was going through a bit of a rough patch as a company. That, however, isn't important. We were taken to intake, which was over in the security building. I was taken aback by just how sanitized that building seemed. The walls, the rooms, the offices, everything was paper white, and the lights were so bright that it gave me a headache. We were taken to the psychiatrist, who was also stationed at the security building. The psychiatrist was a tall, hairy man who Dee instructed us to address as Mr. Golden. He looked us up and down while we were marched into the hallway outside his office. "So this is the fresh meat?" he asked Dee. Mr. Golden had a smile like a shark. His eyes bore into the curly-headed kid. Dee scoffed. "Seriously though, when do we get to eat?" the curly-haired kid asked. "Shut the fuck up," Heinrich suddenly barked. I can remember my heart jumping into my throat. JCOs technically weren't allowed to curse at us or be hostile at us unless we were being hostile toward them. And even then, they're only supposed to restrain us. Curly Hair went silent. His face was almost as white as the wall we were lined up against. Curly Hair looked at the floor. I looked at the kid with the glasses. He seemed just as confused as I was. I looked to Dee and Mr. Golden. Mr. Golden was still smiling. "Alright, so for this part of intake, I'll be speaking to each of you individually in my office so we can try and go over your treatment plans. Remember, the faster you can get treatment done, the faster we can get you home." I'd known that from the GURP. I also knew it was bullshit. It was just a way for the JCOs to try and control us, to make us docile. At least, that's what part of my brain was telling me. The other part of my brain wanted to go home. Then a small part of me wondered if I could steal anything from the chapel we passed on the way up. "Which one of you is Mr. Juno?" "Me," said the kid with the glasses. Mr. Golden motioned his head for the kid to follow him. He did so. They were in Golden's office for maybe 30 minutes. During this time, I heard the curly-haired kid's stomach literally growl. I guess Dee heard it too. Her eyes snapped over to him. "You better make that shit stop," she hissed. I'm sorry." The words fumbled from his mouth. Heinrich smacked the back of his head. The slap was meaty, loud. I could see tears welling up in the boy's eyes. That was when I realized just how completely and utterly fucked I was. "We did not tell you to speak," Heinrich barked. Juno walked out the door. Golden was close behind. Juno looked extremely uncomfortable. He looked horrified. I could feel my heart flutter a bit. "Mr. Imanov," he said. Curly Hair stood up. Juno took his place next to me. He didn't even look at me, he just stared at the floor. We sat in silence for another 30 minutes. Then Imanov walked out with Golden behind him. Golden also had a look of sadness about him. "Mr. Reed?" he asked. I stood up, my heart racing as I followed Golden into his office. It too was wider than a trailer park. It was occupied by a single white desk, and on that desk was a file with my name on it. The next thing that hit me was the odd smell. I'm not sure how to describe it. Think like every cleaning substance known to man mixed with vomit and rot. "Take a seat, Mr. Reed," Golden said as he sat in the white office chair. I sat down in the small chair across from him. He picked up the file and opened it, then eyed me. "Kleptomania? That's an interesting one," he said calmly. I stayed quiet. "Tell me, Mr. Reed, why do you think you're addicted to stealing?" I again stayed quiet. I didn't look at him. Not directly. I heard him laugh softly. "It's set in, hasn't it? This place isn't like normal juvenile institutions, is it?" he said. That was when I looked up at him. "No." "Why do you think that is?" he asked. He seemed happy that I'd figured it out. "I don't know." "If you had to take a guess." My voice faltered. "I don't." "Huh. Would you like to know why?" he asked. I didn't care. At that point in time, my mind was telling me to keep my head down, get through my sentence, and move on. I didn't answer. He tilted his head. "Well?" he asked. "Not really," I said softly. He nodded. "Damn, it usually takes a bit longer to break inmates." "What, did Heinrich slapping Imanov make you realize something? Did it make you feel hopeless?" he asked. Again, I didn't respond. I didn't want to grace this man with an answer. He nodded. "You don't have to answer. I can see the weakness plastered all over your face. You better not show the other boys that. They will eat you alive," he said in a matter-of-fact tone. I stayed quiet. "Anyway, your treatment plan? Kleptomania. That can be treated with a combination of psychotherapy and medication. Now, I don't have time to go into detail and do an actual interview with you to determine what kind of meds you need. But for now, I'm going to assign you to group therapy, which will be every Tuesday and Thursday for your dorm. Understand?" he asked. I nodded. "As far as teachable life skills go," he flipped a few pages in my file. "Your dorm's classes are in the mornings after breakfast. You'll get 3 classes a day. You'll have homework to do at your dorm for each of them. If you want your GED, then you better stay on top of things." That didn't sound so bad. "Now, as far as behavior goes, you watched the GURP videos. You know we can extend your sentence as long as we see fit. If I'm gonna be honest with you, Mr. Reed, a lot of kids end up having to overstay. Most actually. My hopes aren't very high for you either." I eyed him. I felt a flash of rage pass through me. Then I remembered what happened to Imanov and averted my eyes quickly. He smiled. "Maybe you do have a chance." All things considered, I understood the looks on Imanov and Juno's faces when I left. That was a piss-poor first impression of Mr. Golden. We were taken to our dorm, Dorm 16. It was on the left side of the hill, maybe 100 yards up from the security office. Dee and Heinrich were both in GSU. They escorted us inside, where the head of our dorm, JCO Captain Torres, stood outside, waiting for us with his arms crossed. Torres was a big guy. He stood maybe 6'3". He had a thick beard and muscles on top of muscles. He narrowed his eyes at us. "You're late," he said with some venom. "Now you're gonna be behind on schoolwork." I narrowed my eyes at him. I heard Imanov's stomach growl again. Heinrich suddenly kicked the poor kid in the small of the back. The kid fell face first. I felt myself flinch. I looked up at Torres. Imanov wept on the ground, his back arching and jerking while he sobbed. Torres squatted down next to him. "You must be Alexander Imanov. I read your file." Imanov kept weeping. Torres sighed. "Cry, cry, cry. You knew what would happen to you in here. You're only lucky we can't kill you." My eyes bulged. What did he just say? "Those kids. What were their names?" asked Torres. Alexander stopped weeping and looked up at the JCO captain, his face red and still flush with tears. "I had nothing to do with that." "That's what all you people say." "I didn't." Torres chuckled. "And he didn't steal from a church, and he didn't beat the shit out of his mother with a hammer." "You're here for a reason, Imanov. You've got bad paperwork." Torres stood up and looked at me and Juno. "Before we get inside, a word about this dorm. I run a tight ship. I ain't got time for bullshit. I say something, you do it. Understood?" "Yes, sir," I said. Juno echoed me. Torres looked down at Imanov. "Understood?" he asked. Imanov didn't say anything. Torres looked at Heinrich, who kicked Imanov again, this time in the ribs. Imanov howled in pain. I almost felt bad for him, but with bad paperwork and crimes involving kids, I didn't know how I felt. Evil or not, this felt wrong. Torres turned and unlocked the door to the dorm behind him. It was a thick gray metal door that opened with a squeal. Beyond it was a long hallway that was lined on either side with cells. Each cell was a 10 by 10 foot room with a single bed with a 3-inch mattress and a work desk. There weren't bars on the cell doors like your stereotypical prisons. Each door was about 2 inches thick and metal with a single 5-inch window slit, about hip height for the JCOs. We walked by several cells. I turned my head to see a kid staring at me through one of the window slits. He had long dark hair and a wicked smile on his face. "Looky, looky, guys, we got some new toys," he laughed. That was when the place turned into a fucking jungle. Kids started yelling all kinds of slurs from their cell doors. Some started banging. They were too excited to see us. Then came a booming voice. Not Torres, but another voice. This one, feminine and mad as all hell. "Everybody, shut the hell up," she boomed as she came stomping down the hallway. The woman was in her 50s. Her graying black hair was tied back so tightly, it stretched the skin on her weathered and worn face. She walked straight up to Torres. "Captain, we got all 21 accounted for." "It's 24 now, Hale." She looked over us. She seemed unamused. "Take these 2 to the empty cells at the end of Hall B," he said as he motioned toward Juno and Imanov. She motioned her head for them to follow. He turned and started to unlock one of the doors next to him. "Usually, I'd give you a whole speech and let you meet the others, but as of now, we are on lockdown until tomorrow night." "For what?" I asked. "Kid got stabbed. He had bad paperwork," he said in an oddly cold voice as he opened the door. I walked through very cautiously. I looked at my barren cell. I hadn't gotten any of my personal items that I'd been sent with other than my shoes. They had made us put on gray shirts with generic tan pants as we'd arrived. My cell was barren. The bed didn't even have a blanket. You'll get your standard stuff during lunch. A journal, a blanket, a pencil, shit to keep you from going insane. Till then, try and get some sleep or something. I walked to my bed as the door shut behind me. I stood there staring at the mattress. I took a breath, trying my best not to let my emotions get the better of me. I sat down and slouched. This was my life now. My life sucked. It took a few days for me to get acclimated. I made some friends during downtime. The dorm consisted of 2 hallways of cells that were attached to either side of a recreational room. That room was where we'd gather for morning announcements, and where we'd gather to be walked to the cafeteria or to school. We always had to stay in formation when going anywhere, which was easier said than done. This was a bunch of rowdy teenage boys we were talking about, none more so than Peterman. Peterman was the dark-headed kid who'd made our presence known when we'd walked in. He was a whole-ass problem. I'd watched JCO Ledger kick the absolute shit out of him on my second day after he'd picked a fight with Juno over some snacks. I'd asked Juno about it later, and he'd said that Peterman tried to strong-arm him for his uncrustable. That didn't work out so well. Juno was skinny, but he was tall and very violent. Juno had also been beaten up by the guards, but not on the same level as Peterman. That was another thing. These JCOs were almost military-like in their combat proficiency. It wasn't like this at County. Most of the JCOs there were less than useful in a physical altercation. They also tried to de-escalate. These guys didn't. They seemed to enjoy the fighting, almost like they were bored of anything else. I didn't blame them. Most of the boys did try to behave, but there were several who, well, were like Peterman. I said that I made some friends. That wasn't a lie. Juno and I became close pretty quick. During rec time, the both of us would sit in the corner of the rec room and people watch with the other guy we'd started chilling with. His name was Gregory Schmidt. He was 17 and a relatively in-shape young man. He was the quiet type. He could also bench press 350, or so he said. He was in for a hit and run. We watched Imanov a lot. The kid tried his best to make friends, but again, bad paperwork. I think he got beat up twice in the first 3 days by other kids. The guards would let it go on for a second too. It was during rec time while we watched the kid cry in the corner. That was when Juno and I heard Schmidt say it for the first time. "Erica's gonna get him," he said. "What?" I asked. Schmidt looked at us. I forget you're new. Erica, she's a legend around campus." "A legend? Like a ghost story?" asked Juno. "Something like that," he said. "They say she comes in the night and takes the sad kids away." I cocked an eyebrow. "Takes the sad kids away? It's how the story goes, 'cause it's probably all bullshit," he said. "The kids probably get pulled out at night by the guards, or they self-delete." "Does Erica have a backstory?" asked Juno, who seemed oddly excited about this. Schmidt shrugged. "Don't really know. I've heard a few things, like that she was a prisoner who died back here when this was a girls' school. I've heard that she was a guard who died here during the 80s. No one really knows why the kids disappear, just that when they do, the guards don't talk about them anymore." I narrowed my eyes at him. "The fuck you mean?" "I mean, the guards don't talk about him. What do you think happened to Lester, the guy who was in your cell before you? One day he was there, the next he was gone. Dude had spent the whole week before you arrived crying. I've asked the JCOs what happened to him. We all have. You wanna know what they say?" Juno and I looked at him. "Who the hell is Lester?" I took a deep breath as I looked over at JCO Ledger, who was talking with Hale and Torres. Ledger eyed me and smiled. That smile seemed malignant, and I can't for the life of me explain why. I felt my body shudder. Then the rest of the day went on. Peterman came back from the security building, and then almost immediately went back after he flung poop at Torres while making monkey noises. Freaking moron. Torres tased him. I can remember laying in my cell that night thinking, wondering if Schmidt was right. Would Imanov be taken from his cell in the middle of the night? I wasn't sure. The thought kept me awake for a bit. But eventually, I did start to drift off. Then came the scream. It was loud and guttural. I sprang up in my bed, my eyes flashing toward the door. I could hear footsteps clip-clopping by at a rapid pace. I ran to the window, just managing to get a quick glance at the back of Hale's head as she sprinted down the hallway. "What the hell?" I asked. Then came another JCO. "Code Blue! I say again, Code Blue!" he shouted. We didn't see much. No one really did. Code Blue is the term for a medical emergency. My heart danced in its chest. Then came another scream. I could hear shouting, "Tase him! OC is present!" Another scream, the sounds of fighting, something slamming against a door. "Call the GSU!" More struggling, then dead silence. I can remember sitting in my cell and watching the hallway where it all ran. I could hear footsteps coming closer and closer, but they sounded strained, almost like the person was stumbling. I had to crane my neck to see down the darkened hallway. I could see a figure limping. I narrowed my eyes. He was shirtless, but he was wearing some of our prison pants. As he moved out of the darkness, I could feel my stomach knot up. His torso was covered in blood. It was Alexander. "Hey yo, the fuck you do, Alexander?" A voice called out from next to him. Alexander Imanov stopped and turned his head to look through the window of the prisoner talking to him. Then came another scream. Alexander turned toward the cell door. Then he reared his foot back and kicked it as hard as he could. The door collapsed inward, like it was made out of paper. I don't know if the door hit the inmate inside, but the screams popped after that. Everyone in the dorm went silent. That was when the door opened from the other end of the hall, the door that led outside. I craned my neck to look as men in tactical uniforms stormed in behind rifles. "Contact front," a voice called out. Gunfire thundered in the hallway. I took cover. Then came more screaming. I could hear the sounds of flesh being ripped and torn as chaos ensued in the hallway. Then came the ear-splitting shrieking and blaring alarms. I put my hands over my ears and closed my eyes. I think I actually wept. I don't know how long I was down there, on the floor in a fetal position. I know that at some point, the noises must have stopped. I can remember standing up and looking out the window. I could see daylight spilling into the hallway from the doorway. It stood wide open. There was blood everywhere. Puddles, spray, body parts, and viscera decorated the hall like a birthday party from hell. I know I threw up. That was when the smell hit me. I'd realized that I'd pissed myself the night before. I fell back to the floor and covered my ears again. That was when I heard the voices. "What the hell happened?" asked one. "It seems one of the inmates took his own life last night. One of your former father-in-law's sycophants took over the body," answered the other. The first voice was feminine, while the second was definitely Mr. Golden. "Did you gas the inmates? Are they asleep?" "I did. They shouldn't remember a thing," he said. "Have our man take them to sick call. Tell them that dinner last night caused a massive amount of food poisoning." "What about the dead guards?" "GSF soldiers are a dime a dozen. We can have more assigned here." "Do we have that many left after your husband died?" asked Mr. Golden. There was a quick silence. "The ISDD didn't freeze all of our accounts, Mr. Golden. Now get to it." The voices grew closer and closer. I very quickly leaned against the wall and pretended to be asleep. My mind was racing. My head was racing. There was no way I was the only one that heard that, right? Right? I played possum for what felt like several hours before I heard my cell door open. Then came Heinrich's voice. "Damn, this one pissed himself," he laughed. "I wonder what he saw," Torres answered. "Great, now that asshole made it." Two sets of rough hands grabbed me and pulled me out into the hallway, and they set me down next to my cell door. "Is everyone out of their rooms?" asked Mr. Golden. "Yes, sir," said Torres. "Good." There was a snap, like Mr. Golden snapped his fingers. The next thing I knew, I was laying in a bed. My eyes snapped open. I was at fucking sick call. A nurse stood over me with a wide smile on her face. "Hello, young man. That pasta from last night really did a number on everyone, didn't it?" We didn't even have pasta the night before. We had some kind of slop. I felt like I was going crazy. I was one of like 20 inmates who were laying on a series of several beds. I was the first one awake. Everyone else looked relatively out. I can remember thinking to myself, wondering what the hell had just happened. I looked at the cot next to me. where Peterman suddenly sat up screaming. I flinched. Peterman's eyes landed on me, then the nurse. He smiled, a big, toothy grin full of yellow teeth. "Hello, sexy," he said as he tried to reach for her, only to realize he'd been cuffed to the bed. I looked down at my wrists. They weren't cuffed. I laughed softly to myself. "What's so funny, Reed? I'ma stab you when we get back to the dorm." I looked him up and down, then scoffed. I wasn't afraid of this guy. Or maybe I was. Maybe I was afraid of contracting whatever crazy this dude had. Or maybe I already had contracted it. That was why I saw what I saw last night. The nurse gave me a glass of water. I drank it while I looked at Peterman. We were the only two awake. I wanted to ask him what he remembered from the previous night, but the guy's mind was a bag of cats. He didn't belong in a juvie. He belonged in an asylum. Did I as well? I kept quiet about everything. When they explained to us what had happened, I didn't say a word. Not to Juno, not to Schmidt, not to anyone. I convinced myself that it was a bad dream. Rumors went around about Erica taking Imanov and another guy from our dorm called Rico. Our dorm looked like nothing had happened at all. The damn thing was pristine. No more blood, no more body parts, and no more crunched door. It ate at me for weeks. I had nightmares for weeks. Every night I'd have a dream that Imanov stood at my doorway with inky black eyes, saying, little pig, let me in." It was stupid. It was childish. But I was a child, I guess. I felt very alone. I'd written several letters to my parents, and I'd never gotten a response. Hale and a few guards were simply replaced, although Ledger and Torres were still there. You know, it's funny. I've been here 3 months, and it never even dawned on me that I'd never gone to Mr. Golden to be prescribed meds. We got a new guy in our hallway a few days later. His name was Deshaun Wilson. He took over Imanov's cell. He became fast friends with Schmidt, Juno, and I, sitting in our little corner watching Peterman making a fool of himself while trying to harass Bruiser. No, Bruiser wasn't his real name. His real name was Enrique Estevez. He was the grandson of some cartel boss that was super powerful at one point in time. He was also the nicest guy in the whole dorm. Why was he called Bruiser, you ask? Because the kid was 250 pounds of muscle at 16 years old. Peterman wasn't. Peterman was, however, a master in the art of flinging his own poop. Bruiser blackened both his eyes with a single jab. The guards didn't even tase him. Bruiser went without a word of objection. Peter went on a stretcher. "You think they're gonna take Peterman somewhere else soon, right?" asked Juno. "I don't know. I've seen crazier last longer up here," said Schmidt. I looked at him and smirked. "More lore about Erica?" I asked. "Nah, I'm still up here." I rolled my eyes as he laughed. "Who's Erica?" asked Deshaun. We told him. "Damn," was quite literally his only reply. "You don't like ghost stories?" asked Juno. "Nah man, I don't believe in ghosts." "Why not?" asked Schmidt. "You start believing in negative energy energy starts believing in you," Deshaun said calmly. That's deep, bro," said Juno. "No, that's stupid," said Schmidt. Deshaun and Schmidt locked eyes for a moment. Then both started laughing. Then came the voice of another one of the dorm's agitators. This one was called Barney because he was in for robbing a gas station in an inflatable T-Rex costume. Barney had a very high-pitched California voice. He called everyone bitch or girl, and he always, and I mean always, talked shit to Ledger. "Bitch, Ledger, you better drink some mouthwash for your janky-ass breath." Ledger raised an eyebrow at him. I could see Ledger's hand twitch from above his baton. "Come on, we just sent Peterman to GSU. Do you want to go too?" "Why wouldn't I? The boys are cuter over there, unlike yo ugly ass," Barney said. Ledger was standing over Barney, who was sitting at a table in the middle of the room. Ledger turned and eyed Torres. Torres smirked and shrugged. I knew what Barney was doing. He was causing a scene so Bradley and Combs could either A. trade some shit, or B. so they could get the drop on some poor kid. If it was B, I'd have bet money that the poor kid in question was Astanzo, who was the newest bad paperwork guy in the dorm. My eyes flicked over to Astanzo, who was being cornered by both Bradley and Combs. I tapped Juno. Look. Bradley, Combs, what are y'all doing? Asked Torres. Both the kids turned to him in surprise. I think I did too. Normally, the guards wouldn't care. I think the four of us in the corner all looked at each other. We was just welcoming Astanzo to the dorm cap. It's Captain Torres, and no, you will not be welcoming him to the dorms. I could see the confusion on their faces. This was in contrast to the look of pure and unadulterated hatred in the eyes of Astanzo. They separated. Now, what was Astanzo in for? Well, he was 15 years old. He'd killed 3 12-year-olds and hid their bodies in a shed behind his house. He was supposed to be tried as an adult, and he was, but he had been placed in juvie because of his age. Once he turned 19, he was gonna be off to big boy prison forever and ever and ever. Why was Torres defending him? I wondered. Astanzo had never spoken a word. He was like us in the way he'd sit and watch people. It honestly made me uncomfortable. I woke up that night from another nightmare about Imanov. This time, he'd been inside my cell and whispering in my ear. I woke up covered in sweat. My cell was pitch black. Then came the voice. Nightmares bothering you, Mr. Reed? I nearly jumped out of my socks as I turned towards the source. Mr. Golden sat there staring at me. You know, it's quite interesting. The night Imanov killed himself, we had a fail-safe in place which would gas every cell in the dorm with enough chloroform to knock out 2 of you. We went to change them this morning during school. Every cell's gas tanks were empty, except yours. Would you mind telling me how that happened? He asked. I looked behind him at the open door. He followed my gaze and smiled. That was when Dee stepped into the door frame with a pair of handcuffs. My blood ran cold. All right, my little thieving altar boy, let's go. I was cuffed and taken to the security office. More aptly, I was taken to Mr. Golden's office. He shoved me roughly inside. A woman of about 40 sat at his desk. She had blonde hair that was tied back and a pantsuit on. John Reed, she greeted. I stared at her. Have a seat, she commanded. I stood there for a moment, only to be shoved by Golden. I'm Warden Stein Jensen. You can call me Samantha, she cooed as she looked me up and down. Do you know why you're here? She asked. I didn't reply. You were right, Mr. Golden. He's a quiet one, she said with a smile. He's weak, said Mr. Golden. The weak do tend to survive, sometimes even thrive. Just look at Lucifer. That hit me like a truck. The hell did she mean by that? Her eyes hit me again. You're here because you saw something. We know you saw something. Something you were supposed to forget. Are you asking me to forget? I asked. Oh no, no. I want to know exactly what you saw that night. I told her. She listened carefully. Then when I was done, she looked up at Mr. Golden. How crazy is that story? She asked with a smile. And you even peed yourself? That made me feel small. Yes, I said in a voice barely above a whisper. Wow, she mocked, even smaller. So tell me, John, why haven't you told anyone? Why would I asked. Because you're scared. You're a child. I'm not stupid. Plus, who's gonna believe me? My parents? They don't send me letters back. My friends were too knocked out to know what happened. I'd just be deemed crazy. maybe even get disappeared by Erica." "Disappeared by Erica?" asked Samantha. "Yes," I said. "Who told you that story?" she asked. "Everyone knows that story," I said softly. Samantha looked at Mr. Golden. It was almost like she was disappointed. She exhaled through her nose. "Where did they get that name?" she asked plainly. Golden shrugged. She nodded. "Go find out." Golden snapped his fingers and vanished. I sat in the office dumbstruck. "Stand up, John," Samantha said as she got to her feet. The door suddenly opened and Dee walked in with Heinrich close behind. They grabbed me by my arms. "Bring him along," she said calmly. The terror that gripped me in that moment was absolute. She walked us out into the hallway, smiling as she did so. "So here's what's gonna happen, Mr. Reed. Since you seem to know so much and so little, we're going to the school. Once there, I'm going to show you something that I think will make you a bit more hospitable." Yes, ma'am." "It's just Samantha." We were loaded onto a golf cart. Dee stepped into the driver's seat and floored it. We were at the school in under a minute, Heinrich and Dee hoisting me out and pulling me inside. There was a guard stationed at the front with an M4. "Get on your radio and tell Mr. Golden to bring this one's friends up here. I'll need to speak with them as well." We walked into the school building. I was escorted straight to a set of stairs I hadn't seen before. Stairs that led down and into a black void, straight into the school's basement. We entered the dark. It wasn't until we hit the ground that the lights came on. We found ourselves in the middle of a long hallway. It smelled like mildew. The air was sticky and moist. Samantha stopped us at a doorway. She turned to me and sneered as she pushed the door open. The room we stepped into was brightly lit. It was also surprisingly clean. The first thing I noticed was the man standing with his back to us. He was a tall, dark-headed man in a GSU uniform. He didn't turn to us when we entered. "Chernobog, how's she doing?" asked Samantha. "She?" I asked as my eyes landed in the center of the room. There was a translucent cube-shaped cell in the middle of the room. Inside said cell sat a child, a small female that couldn't have been older than 2. She had short dark hair that was tied up into 2 horns like pigtails. She was wearing a cute little princess dress as well. She sat there playing with 2 blocks. She had a smile on her face. "Same as usual. The girl doesn't sleep. She doesn't eat. She just plays," said the man in a wickedly deep voice that sent a shudder down my spine. I eyed Samantha, then Dee. Dee looked very uneasy. What is this?" I asked. Samantha sighed. "I'll show you," she said. That was when Mr. Golden entered the room with a line of several cuffed prisoners from my dorm. First was Juno, then Schmidt, then Astanzo, then Barney, then Deshaun, and finally Esteves and Peterman. Torres and Ledger brought up the rear. Everyone looked tired. Everyone looked scared. Everyone looked confused. I turned back to Warden Stein Jensen. She didn't smile at me. She only sighed. "Aw, look at the little baby," said Peterman. He was suddenly judo chopped in the side of the neck by Torres. Peterman fell. The chain from everyone's linked handcuffs brought half the group down with him in a tangle of limbs and fear. "Pick one," she asked. Pick one? For what?" I asked. "Pick one," she said slowly. I... She groaned. "Heinrich?" Heinrich was suddenly next to me. There was a sharp pain in my stomach. I buckled forward and to my knees, my eyes shooting up toward Heinrich, who was holding his baton. Samantha knelt next to me. "Pick one of your friends," she whispered. Something cracked the back of my head. I saw stars. My vision flashed white. I was on my hands and knees now. Tears burst from my eyes as I choked back a sob. Then suddenly, I was being yanked up. "Weak," Mr. Golden boomed. "Pick one." I didn't know what was about to happen. I was fucking terrified. I think I peed myself. I looked at the group of kids. Kids I'd served time with. I didn't want any of them to get hurt, despite the fact that we were all criminals. We were still kids. "Pick!" Samantha screamed in my ear. Astanzo. I pick Astanzo." She actually let off a soft laugh. Was it a laugh? I don't know. Torres unlocked Astanzo's cuffs and roughly shoved him toward the translucent cube. Astanzo shot me a hateful glare as he passed by. I swallowed. Torres opened a door to the side of the cube and motioned for Astanzo to walk through. Astanzo looked at him for a second, then at the little girl. My heart rate started to speed up. I realized I'd made a grave mistake, putting that animal in there with the little girl. Then Astanzo smiled, almost cruelly. He stepped through the door. Wait, I started. Torres shut the door. Oh God, what had I done? Astanzo looked down at the child, then looked at us through the glass. He had a wicked smile on his face. I looked away, or I tried to until Heinrich's hand grabbed my face and aimed it at the cube. "Don't look away," he whispered. Astanzo looked down at the child. He laughed. She looked up at him with those big innocent brown eyes and giggled. He then reared his leg back to kick her. There was a sudden blinding flash of red. I flinched hard. The baby was suddenly sitting in the middle of the cube. Blood splattered all over the right side of the glass. I was mortified. The baby was fine. It was playing with Astanzo's severed arm like it was a building block. Astanzo lay against the back wall, grabbing at the stump where his arm used to be. He didn't scream. He didn't cry. He looked to be in shock. The prisoners all seemed to scream and groan in unison. "Oh no, the little bitch has heat vision," Barney cried. I stood there slack-jawed. Samantha was looking at me still. "What the fuck?" I asked. "That is Erica," she said. "What is she, some kind of superhero?" "Try daughter of the one true king of hell," she said softly as she approached the glass. The baby saw her doing this and got to its feet. Its chubby little legs waddled towards her. "Mama?" it said as it reached for her. She touched the glass. The baby's eyes flashed red. A red beam of energy hit the glass and went ricocheting around until it hit Astanzo in the side of the head. His head exploded, sending a shower of red brain splatter everywhere. "She can't control her powers, so we have to keep her in here," Samantha said softly. My head was starting to spin. Why were they showing me this? What was this? Did she say one true king of hell? Samantha looked back at me. She had tears in her eyes. "She doesn't mean to hurt people," she said softly. "But the energy beams don't stop until they hit flesh. It's what her father designed them for." "Her father? You mean Lucifer?" asked Schmidt. That was apparently the wrong thing to say. Samantha shut up, her face flashing with rage. "Lucifer is a coward and a fraud," she boomed as she motioned for Ledger. Ledger grabbed Schmidt by the back of his shirt while Torres began unlocking his cuffs. Schmidt started to struggle. "No, I won't. You can't do this to me." They wrestled him over and tossed him at the feet of Samantha and Mr. Golden. Samantha looked down at him with a face full of contempt. "Chernobog." "Yes, ma'am." "Dagger, please." Chernobog produced what looked like an obsidian dagger from his belt and handed it to the woman. Schmidt's eyes were big. Heinrich still had me by the back of my neck. The boys in the corner started to speak out. "No, you can't do this," someone said. "Shut up," barked Dee. Schmidt started to scramble backwards, but he was suddenly yanked up by Torres. "You want to know what this is?" asked Samantha as she got really close to Schmidt's face. "Fuck you," Schmidt barked before spitting in her face. She didn't even flinch. She only wiped the phlegm off with her free hand. Schmidt took a blow to the ribs from Ledger. "This is one of the ceremonial daggers of Chernobog. Would you like to know what it does?" she asked. I don't care," Schmidt groaned. She rolled her eyes as Torres yanked Schmidt's head up to where it was eye level with her. "These daggers, they summon demon spirits into the bodies of which they have killed." "You're a crazy bitch," Schmidt growled. Torres raised a hand to strike, but she stopped him with a hand motion. She smiled. "Crazy? I fucked Abaddon, like a lot. Of course I'm crazy. But you're a bad kid. You're all bad kids. That's why we have to do this. That's why we have to rehabilitate you, give you a new mind and soul before sending you out into the world." He struggled against the grips of the two guards. I wish I could say he stood a chance, but he didn't. She raised the dagger up and brought it down hard. The point of the blade went in at a downward angle, just under the left side of his chin. A geyser of blood sprayed Samantha in her face when she ripped the blade out. Schmidt grabbed at his neck and he stumbled backward. Torres and Ledger let him fall to the floor. "Oh my god," I wept as I tried to step back. Heinrich held me in place. He was so strong. "Keep watching, boy," he whispered in my ear. Schmidt died quickly. I watched as his chest rose up and down several times before it stopped altogether. The room went silent, aside from the weeping from the other boys. Then suddenly, Schmidt sat up. I can remember screaming. His eyes were inky black. He had a wide smile on his face. Well, well, well," he started in a sly voice as he got to his feet. "Jesus, welcome to the rebellion," said Mr. Golden. "Jesus?" asked the now possessed Schmidt with an inhuman smile. That question went about as well as a fart in a church. Everyone looked at Schmidt strangely. "Jesus was supposed to be who was summoned. Which one are you?" asked Chernobog. "You don't recognize me, Chernobog? After all, I gave you those daggers." Samantha took a step backward. Her eyes snapped to Mr. Golden. She was horrified. The guards all pulled pistols. "We need backup in the crypt," Dee barked into her radio. "Lucifer?" asked Mr. Golden. Schmidt laughed. "Did you really think you could summon rebels from my realm without me noticing?" "That's so." He snapped his fingers a few times. "Stupid," he said. His black eyes landed on Mr. Golden. "Even for you, Malik." Mr. Golden smirked. "What's your plan here? To gloat? To bore us to death? You don't even have your angelic body anymore. Not since Abaddon destroyed it. Your other son isn't here either. Tell me, how does it feel to rule alone, with no counsel, and an heir that despises you?" I mean, I'm enjoying myself, and Owen doesn't hate me. I don't think." Mr. Golden stepped forward, his body twisting and morphing as he did so. It was a fucking horror show. He turned into what I can only describe as a deformed monster. It was tall and lanky, with 4 spindly arms that ended in razor-sharp claws, 2 of which burst from the sides of his suit. He grew in height. He probably stood about 10 feet. His mouth reached an inhumanly long length as his teeth became pincer-like. His eyes went jet black. He looked down on Schmidt. Schmidt wasn't impressed. Mr. Golden lowered himself to where he was face to face with Schmidt. "Wow, that's embarrassing," Schmidt said. "It looks nothing like your demonic bodies in Gehenna. Who cooked up this mutation? Holy fuck, it smells horrible." I felt myself stepping back in fear. That was when I realized that Heinrich had let me go. My eyes went large as I backed into the cube. One of the creature's arms shot out and grabbed Schmidt by his throat and lifted him up. "Did you really think you could overpower me in the possessed body of a boy?" he snarled. Schmidt laughed. "I was trying to locate you. They're the ones who's gonna be doing the fighting." "There?" asked the demon. My eyes hit the doorway, where two men stood, both of which were wearing three-piece suits. The one on the left leaned against the door with his arms crossed. He had a well-trimmed beard and short brown hair. He had a deathly serious look on his face. The other stood with his hands in his pockets. He had short dark hair and an equally dark stubble. He also looked frustratingly annoyed. The creature dropped Schmidt and smiled. He started walking right up towards them. "Horseman," he growled. The two men eyed each other. The bearded man sighed like he was bored. "Marcus, he's all yours." The other one laughed. The creature swiped a claw at him. The suited man sidestepped it and then decked the creature in the cheek. The creature dropped like a sack of rocks. "Damn, bitch got his shit rocked," Barney said from the corner. The room went dead silent. Marcus lifted his foot up to stomp on the creature's head, when suddenly a beam of red energy hit him in the shoulder. He staggered back from the impact, his eyes darting down to his shoulder. His suit was smoking. I turned to see Samantha standing next to me with fear in her eyes. She had the little girl aimed at Marcus. "Kill them!" she screamed. The guards opened fire. Gunshots rang out. I could see the shots bouncing off of the man leaning against the doorway's suit. He suddenly vanished and reappeared behind Dee. His fist exploded through the front of her chest. Then he appeared next to Ledger. He yoinked the gun from the man's hand, squashed it. Then Pimp slapped him so hard, his head exploded. Then Taurus hit him with the taser. The man caught the prongs without looking and yanked the taser from his hands using them. He then kicked the man in the chest so hard he flew through the wall. The other man had Chernobog by his throat. He snapped it in one motion. I had my back pressed hard against the glass. Samantha had her child aimed at Marcus. I could see the blast powering up. My eyes went wide. The red light filled the room. The other man was in front of Marcus suddenly, his eyes now glowing green as the beam of energy hit him in the hand. He seemingly absorbed it. So much for it needing flesh to stop, I guess. He suddenly teleported. The next thing I knew, he was standing between me and Samantha, his finger booping her on the forehead. She collapsed. The man caught the kid as her eyes went red again. He pooped her. She fell asleep. The man turned to me. Then his eyes snapped up behind me. I felt an arm suddenly wrap around my neck as cold steel pressed up against my head. "Don't move. I'll blow this fucker's brains out." The man looked unamused. "Oh, look, Marcus. A hostage," he said. I turned my eyes to see Marcus standing there, again with his hands in his pockets. How disappointing. That was when I heard a wet plop. It was followed by a god-awful smell. Was that shit? Oh god, it was. Heinrich was just as disgusted as I was. He loosened his grip and took a step back. "What the fu-" I heard him start. It was then that I noticed that his gun wasn't aimed at my head anymore. This was my chance. I spun quickly and kneed the giant psychotic fuck right in the balls. I heard him whimper as he fell backward, his face covered with a massive wet blob of Peterman's fecal matter. My eyes shot over to Schmidt, who was standing with a massive smile next to everyone who he'd uncuffed during the fight. Peterman was in the front giggling. My eyes went back to Schmidt, who raised his weapon at me. Only Marcus was suddenly in between us. I'm not sure what happened next. What I do know is that Marcus somehow detached the man's head from his shoulders and then tossed it at Mr. Golden, who was trying to run out into the hallway. Mr. Golden tripped over it and face-planted. Marcus was suddenly standing over him. My eyes went back to the bearded man who was looking down at the child. Another suited man appeared next to him, this one taller, clean-shaven. He had a narrow face and piercing eyes. "What is this?" the bearded man asked. "Abaddon's daughter." The bearded man sighed. "What do we do with her?" "You killed her father. You have what it takes to kill her too, Trent." The bearded man, Trent, he took a breath. "I didn't kill her father in this cycle." "Yes, you did. Don't tell me you feel guilty," the other man said. Trent sighed. I heard a sudden scream. I turned to see Marcus stomping on Mr. Golden's head. Blood went everywhere. My attention went back to Trent and the other suited man. Schmidt walked up next to them. "We should kill it," he said. "It's a child," argued Trent as he pulled her back defensively. "It's the daughter of one of the most powerful beings to ever exist. What's going to happen if she grows up one day and decides to take revenge for what you did to Abaddon, or she decides she wants to rule hell? Do you really want to take that chance?" asked Schmidt. "Lucifer, it's really hard to take you seriously when you're in the body of a minor." "This isn't the first time I've been in a minor. Wait, that came out wrong. I'm not a Catholic priest." He looked at me. "Up high, tithing thief." I gawked at him. He shrugged. "Tough crowd." Trent rolled his eyes. "I'm not killing a kid." "I'll do it," said Marcus. Trent eyed him, then the other man. "This is wrong." "She's already killed people," the other man said. "Samantha said she didn't know how to control her powers," I found myself saying. "Exactly. You can't leave her at a school or with a babysitter if she's gonna chop him in half," said Schmidt. Trent exhaled. "We teach her to control her powers. We teach her to do what, Trent? To be good? She's half Kahenian. She's Abaddon's spawn. Are you sure your judgment isn't askew because your wife just had a little girl?" asked Marcus. "She's a fucking child. She has the right to choose. Isn't that why we stopped the cycle? So we could choose our fates? I'm a lot of things, Marcus. I've killed thousands, but I've always had a reason. A good reason. This is wrong, and you know it. She's a monster, from a family of monsters." "She's not a monster. Not yet." "Oh, Yahweh, I think Trent might be right," the third suited man said. Everyone looked at him. He studied the sleeping child in Trent's arms. "Abel, what do you mean you think?" "This child, it's got potential to be a monster. It's already killed, but it's not inherently malignant. It's a baby. It didn't kill on purpose. It didn't even kill because of its nature. It killed because Abaddon packed her with enough black magic to wipe out a continent. Yeah, she's unstable. But," he exhaled, "we could help her." This is ridiculous," Marcus said. "Do you not remember what Abaddon did to us? What he put us all through? What Lilith did? She killed my children." "This child wasn't responsible for that," said Abel. "I don't care. Trent then did something unexpected. "If you want to kill her, then do it. Take her and do it," he said as he handed Marcus the baby. Marcus grabbed it from him and looked down on her sleeping form. He snapped his fingers and a blade suddenly appeared in his hand. He raised it up. "What?" Abel started. Marcus's hand hung in the air for a moment as he looked down on the child. He raised his weapon again, this time even harder. But he couldn't. He couldn't fucking do it. His eyes went back up to Trent. He handed the child back to him gently. Marcus had tears in his eyes when he snapped his fingers and vanished. "Holy fuck, you guys suck," Schmidt said before turning to me. "Mr. Reed, I like your style," he said, right before his eyes went back to their usual color and the body suddenly dropped to the ground dead. I looked down at the body and then turned back to the suited men. They weren't paying attention at all to me. Abel looked at Trent. "How did you know he wouldn't do it?" he asked. "Because he's not a monster." With that, I started to walk off. More like lumber off, actually. I wanted a shower. I wanted to go back to sleep. I wanted to never even think about stealing from a church ever again. I found myself in the hallway next to Deshaun and Juno when the soldiers came through. We didn't say a word. We just sat and watched everyone pass by. These ones weren't GSU. They were actual soldiers. They were part of some unit called the ISDD. Don't know what that stands for, but they were better than the GSU. A lot of us got our sentences either shortened or were let go for time served altogether. I got to go home. My parents were overjoyed to have me back, which was weird considering they never wrote me once while I was there. Or that's what I thought. I did find out a few years later that they had written me. They'd written me constantly and never received a reply. Those GSU bastards. I wondered how many parents whose kids were brutalized or killed were out there. How many would never see their kids again because some bimbo fucked a demon? I don't know. I know GSS got burned to the ground. I do know I still have nightmares. I go to therapy. It helps some. I mean, I'm depressed and probably have a healthy amount of PTSD. It's been a few years. I'm 25 now. I feel kind of directionless in life right now. I don't suddenly get the urge to steal anymore. So there's that. I guess something about the literal devil telling me he liked my style hit a nerve. I don't know. I find myself wondering what happened to that little girl sometimes. I wonder if she's out there with those suited men training to become a superhero. I hope so. I also hope her mother is in the worst prison they could find for her.